Hey guys, you're in for a special treat. We have an inside Las Vegas type podcast story for you. And best of all, we got Marco playing poker, which is always entertaining. Okay, Marco, we got a couple of things. You really felt a need to get this out there into the cyberspace. So first, let's talk about how you did in the tournament, so we can enjoy that.
We didn't have to talk about that part.
So what tournament was this?
It was the Venetian Deep Stack tournament. It's a 3-week event. They have tournaments, and I went down yesterday, President's Day, and I didn't cash. So
now, when I hear Venetian, I think of two things. Well, three things. I think of bad floor personnel, though now that the Bellagio, my money gets stolen and no one seems to care, I'm not sure relative to Bellagio how good they are or aren't, because I've never had my money stolen at the Venetian. Number two, I think of a couple other things. I think about at night all the hot chicks in the clubwear coming out of Tao or Dow.
coming down the escalators.
Yeah.
By the
What's your
poker.
take on that?
I've probably noticed that a couple times.
Yeah. I also think about the noodle place across the way at the sports book that has awesome noodles. Did you eat there yesterday?
I didn't eat there yesterday, but that's my second favorite restaurant in the Venetian. I like eating at the Grand Lux.
Oh, the Midwest, big portions. That's a Cheesecake Factory guy owns that, or the same
know
company.
Same franchise,
All right,
yes.
and I also think a bunch of internet, I mean, they're good players, but they're internet players, let's just say that in a non-pejorative way, that have this sneer on their face constantly that they think they're making the right play all the time. Now, I'm always curious if they're so good why they're playing 5-10 with me, but hey, because at the Bellagio, they're spreading, 50, 100, but, who knows?
Who knows?
All right, so that's my take on the Venetian. Tell us about the tournament and stick to the highlights.
Well,
And please don't editorialize about
No.
how it was a bad beat or whatever.
Nope. 342 people in the tournament. I went out 98th, and so
Now, did
no
you
money.
play any hands, or you just let him chip you down to get 98?
No, I played. I played hands. What a guy.
Because really, there's an old story about Stu Unger. This is back when there was only a couple hundred people, I think, and maybe not even that, maybe 150, 175, where he was with 45 or 50 people to go, he was so far ahead in first that he actually went out and OD'd and was literally in the hospital for the shuffle up and deal the next day. But because of the fact that he had so much money, when he got chipped down, he ended up getting 7th in the world. Now imagine if it was in this day and age, and they didn't have the 6-month delay, or 4-month delay, and literally they would have had an empty seat and say Stu Unger's in the hospital, and he ends up getting 7th. So really, you probably could start not play one hand and still get 90th. So the question is, did you play a hand?
Yeah, we played several hands, sir.
All right.
What a guy.
Now, there's another question that I have, which is I have found in No Limit, one of our forum posters, we've got some sharp guys that are poker players, and he's just one that jumps out. But really, when I put up any poker analysis, the feedback I get is quite strong, I think. Why don't you explain the hand you got knocked out on, just please, with no editorializing, just tell us the logistics, and maybe in the feedback we can actually ask some of our poker players to critique.
Well, just pretty simple. I was on the button, and I was getting into a situation where I was in shove mode. I had 10 or 11 big blinds left, so I had to find my spot quick. And guy on the cutoff, who was an aggressive player, raises, and when you get later in a tournament, raises. There's a lot of raise and fold, and so he was looking to take it down.
Sounds thrilling.
It happens. I knew he was raising light. I looked down. I got king queen, so I'm happy to shove with that. Guy in the small blind, what I feel made a major mistake, especially for me.
This is the no editorializing.
Well, he flat calls my all in, okay, which knowing that the other guy was priced in to call. He should have made a re-raise on me to get isolation. I mean, that's the move you're supposed to make there, but he didn't. The other guy calls because he's got odds to call, and it's 3 of us go to the flop. Well, the guy, turns over 9-7. I got king queen. I hit my king on the turn. He hits a 7 on the flop. I hit my king on the turn, and on the river he hits the 7 or the 9, whichever the other one.
So 5 outs.
Yeah, so he hit his 2 pair, but if the other guy would have, you know, I would have won the hand. He had like Queen Jack, the third guy in. If he makes a raise and gets isolation against me, I would have still been alive in the tournament. But
So how did you get down to 11 big blinds?
honestly, the last level, when they have 40-minute levels, I literally went an entire level that I didn't have a face card. I was getting 9 fours and 6 deuces that I couldn't even try to steal with. And, you know, I played a couple hands in that round, and I lost one hand, and just was a situation where you don't get hands, you start getting shut down.
So you've got a more interesting story here that's applicable to pregame. But
Absolutely.
first, I'm gonna ask. I'm looking out to the main camera. I'm gonna ask our internet poker players, please listen. If you have to rewind the tape a few times and listen to the intonation and the words he uses, there's something about Marco's view that he never really feels like he made a mistake. Is what you end up getting is always someone else messed up. It's almost like he's a perfect poker player, and you know, it's simply a delusion. So what I've been telling him this for years, trying to school him, and he says, "Oh, that's math stuff," or "Oh, that's too much math." But so that's fine. Please help him out, and we'll do this maybe once every 2 months or so. Okay, thank you. Now, you had a fun pregame story.
It was
Why
a
don't you
fun
tell that
pregame
one?
story. You know, when you're sitting at a tournament, and anybody that plays tournaments knows, you know, you're doing a lot of folding, so there's a lot of, you know, a little bit of chit chat at the table. And a guy goes, you know, he's talking, he says, you know, Syracuse-Villanova game starting in 15 minutes. And he's, you know, he's saying, I'm going to go bet the game. And I tell the guy, I'm being nice sitting at the table. I tell him, I like the under in the game. He goes, oh. He says, what's the
Was
total?
this one of your late telephone?
This was my pick yesterday. This is what I
your
gave
best
out
bet.
yesterday. And he says, the total, what is it? And I said, it's 136. He goes, wow, that seems low. And I said to him, that's exactly why I like it. And the guy looks at me and goes, huh? And so right there at the poker table, I gave out a trap game lesson. And what we proceeded to do was I told the guy, these two teams have already played. The first time they played.
Okay, so don't break down. The game's over. So you explain to him why you like the game.
Well, some people might want to know sometimes how you find a trap.
Well, listen, you talk about that constantly, so we've got that one covered.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So he says, you know what? You know, that makes sense. He ends up going over and betting the game. You know, he leaves, you know, misses a hand or two, goes over and bets the game. So he runs back to the table because we're right by the sports book. And he says, thanks, man. You see what happened. And the game wins, you know, and he tells me afterwards, because today, Tuesday, is the super satellite for the main event. He says, I bet enough so I paid my way into the super satellite. And he goes, thanks a lot. And I says, he goes, that really, because I never thought of that. And I says, well, this is kind of what I do for a living. And he goes, what? You know, and he asked me, and I told him, I gave him a card.
Kind of what you do. You've never worked a straight job in your life.
And I said, well, you know, when you're talking and explaining to somebody, when you first say that you're in a sports service business, 9 out of 10 people immediately think you're a bookie. Okay, then you got to explain further and tell them, you know, what you do. So I did that, and he asked me for a card. I ended up passing out a couple cards at the poker table yesterday. And, you know, whenever I finally got, you know, busted out, you know, everybody was real nice. Hey, you know, thanks, you know, it was great playing with you.
Guy might be watching right now.
Could be watching right now. I hope he was still in the tournament because he had a lot of chips when I left.
Last question. Do you think potentially that you being distracted by the trap game talk affected your poker playing?
Only the last 10 minutes of the Syracuse-Villanova game because it ended up at 135.
So you won.
Yeah, and the total was 136.
All right, guys, you can join the conversation. And again, please give Marco some poker feedback. And we'll be back later in the week with more videos.